today. I can see we've got quite an extensive number of visitors, and no guesses for which agenda item that is for in particular. So what we are going to do is we are going to run this meeting with some mutual respect and decorum, and everyone will get the opportunity to speak at the right times. Obviously, we'll all have seen the tier announcement. So Lincolnshire, and particularly South Kesteven, is to enter into tier 3. And obviously this will be reviewed on the 16th of December, where I do hope it will be a district decision moving forwards and looking at the area of South Kesteven. And as many members will know, I jointly signed a letter to the Prime Minister alongside our members of Parliament from Grantham and Stamford, which is Gareth Davies, and South Holland and the Deepings, Sir John Hayes. And that letter was also signed by the leader of South Holland District Council, Councillor Lord Gary Porter, and the leader of Lincolnshire County Council, Councillor Martin Hill. And not just on Prime Ministers, obviously later in this meeting, we are also discussing another former Prime Minister today. And I'm looking forward to a positive, productive meeting with respectful debate for both individuals and for their thoughts. So if I can firstly move us on to agenda item number 1, which is the register of attendance, please, and apologies. And if I can move on to Lucy, please.
I believe Lucy's actually having some technical issues, so I will do the roll call, please, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Kellam Cook.
Present.
Councillor Barry Dobson.
He is present. Sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Annie Mason.
Present.
Councillor Dr. Peter Mosley.
I'm present.
Councillor Robert Reid.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Adam Stokes.
Present.
Councillor Rosemary Trollope-Bellew.
Rosemary is present, but she's currently having technical difficulties.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. Therefore, moving on to agenda item number 2, which is the minutes of the previous meeting. Do I have any areas of clarification or change from Cabinet members, please? If not, I am happy to propose, if I could have a seconder.
Happy to second, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Stokes. And if we can therefore move to the vote then, please, Shelley.
Leader, I'm now back in the meeting. Apologies for
great.
earlier. I was having technical issues too. So, Councillor Kellam Cook.
4.
Councillor Barry Dobson. Councillor
4.
Dobson.
Sorry, he's saying 4. He's currently being reconnected to the system.
Councillor Annie Mason.
4.
Councillor Dr. Peter Mosley.
4.
Councillor Robert Reid.
4.
Councillor Adam Stokes.
4.
Councillor Rosemary Trollope-Bellew.
4.
Thank you. That's passed, Leader.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Therefore, moving on to items for recommendation to Council, and we're going to agenda item number 4, which is the Council Tax Base 2021-22, and we've got a report from the Cabinet Member for Finance and Resources, so I'll hand over to Councillor Adam Stokes, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. The report in front of you is to approve the Council Tax Base for the financial year 21 and 22, and this is to be recommended to Council for the forthcoming financial year. The Council Tax Base for the forthcoming financial year is equating to 48,122.4 in accordance with the relevant legislation, and this will form the basis upon which the Council will estimate the Council Tax income for the 21-22 budget. I mean, the Council Tax Base is a key part of the budget setting process and is a statutory calculation, and this base was taken as at the September 2020 and is used as the base in which to calculate council tax income for the next year. The council tax base has been calculated at 0.4%, which is less than the medium-term financial plan projection of 1.5%. This reduction is a combination of a lesser number of properties than previous years and an increase in the number of residents claiming council tax support. This slowdown in tax base is in keeping with most billing authorities, with some councils actually declaring a zero base percent. for the going forward. So the collection. So the collection rate for 21-22 will be calculated following a review of the forecast outturn for 2021. The positive update is that the collection rate as at the 30th of November 2020 is only 0.8% less than the collection rates as at the 30th of November 2019. So the collection rates have improved since the reintroduction, I'll get there eventually, of recovery, whilst also maintaining our direct support for customers experiencing hardship. So that's all I've got to say on that, Leader. So I'd like to propose recommendation number 1 on page 9 of the agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stokes, for that comprehensive report. Do I have somebody wishing to second this report? Councillor Trollope-Bellew. Thank you. And do I have any Cabinet members that wish to ask any questions or points on this report? If you could indicate in the chat function. No? Then in that case, Lucy, if we can proceed to the vote, please.
Councillor Kellam Cook.
4.
Councillor Barry Dobson.
4.
Councillor Annie Mason.
4.
Councillor Dr. Peter Mosley.
4.
Councillor Robert Reid.
4.
Councillor Adam Stokes.
4.
Councillor Rosemary Trollope-Bellew.
4.
That's carried, Leader.
Wonderful, thank you. And therefore moving on to the second item for consideration to recommendation to Council, which is agenda item number 5, which is the review of the Licensing Act 2003 policy statement. And I'll hand over to Councillor Dr. Peter Mosley, please.
Thank you very much, Leader. Yes, I'm delighted to bring this to the Council today, to the Cabinet today. We have a statutory duty as an authority to publish a revised licensing policy every 5 years. This essentially gives us the opportunity to update our policy with legislation, but also gives us an opportunity to go out to our residents and seek their views through consultation. The process that this particular review has gone through is it has gone to the Environment Overview and Scrutiny Committee, where they discussed the draft revised policy. It has then gone out to consultation. We include within our paper today some comments from the members of the public. In general, there is very little people have to say about this consultation, but there have been quite significant changes throughout the document, which is contained in Appendix 1, due to changes in recent legislation. This is quite a lengthy process that this document goes through, and this is almost the final one. And I will open up to Cabinet members should they have any comments, but I would ask you to recommend, according to the decisions on page 1, to note the feedback from the public consultation on the draft statement of licensing, and to recommend to Council that the draft statement of licensing policy 2021 to 26 is adopted. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder for this report, please? Councillor Trollope-Bellew, thank you. And do I have any Cabinet members wishing to speak on agenda item number 5? No? Well, thank you for your report there, Peter, on this. And Lucy, if we can move to the vote, please.
Councillor Kellam Cook.
4.
Councillor Barry Dobson.
4.
Councillor Annie Mason.
4.
Councillor Dr. Peter Mosley.
4.
Councillor Robert Reid.
4.
Councillor Adam Stokes.
4.
Councillor Rosemary Trollope-Bellew.
4.
That's carried, Leader.
Super, thank you, Lucy. Moving on to items for Cabinet decision, which are key. The first agenda item, number 6 on the agenda, is the food waste collection, and I'll hand back over to Councillor Dr. Peter Mosley, please.
Thank you very much, Leader. Yes, once again, I'm delighted to bring this report to you as a key decision report for Cabinet today. As you know, for the last 3 years, we've been carrying out food waste collection through selection of the households within South Kesteven. This food waste collection service was originally a trial funded by the Lincolnshire Waste Partnership, and provided information to the rest of our Lincolnshire Waste Partnership partners in respect of separating out food waste from the residual waste stream within our waste collection duties. Our success with this trial was significant. We were able to attain a success rate, a contribution of around about 85% of the population taking part in this, and we were able to view from that an increase in recycling rates of over 10%, a significantly cleaner recycling stream, and a significant reduction in the residual waste that we in Lincolnshire send to the energy from waste plant at North Icombe. Very little of that residue goes to landfill, so we're very much at the forefront in that respect. As a consequence of that, we want to keep this trial running until there is such a decision made by government with regards to separating food waste out nationally. And with that in view, it's important for us to keep our existing trial properties with a food waste collection service alongside their residual and recycling, but also to seek to maintain an ambition to get this rolled out further. Obviously, there are challenges with that, and we're not seeking to do that immediately, and I will continue with my efforts to try and make that happen. But in this particular instance, I would like the Cabinet to consider the recommendations on page 61 of the Cabinet papers to continue the existing food waste collection service until at least March 2022, utilising the Food Waste Financial Reserve to fund and subject to annual budget approval processes, but also to support in principle the ambition to expand food waste collections throughout the district, accepting that this will be dependent on future funding and or government's proposals to make the service a statutory requirement. Thank you.
No, thank you, Councillor, and I'm fully in support of this. I'm very happy to second this report. As many will know, we obviously declared a climate change emergency, and particularly reducing the amount we use is vitally important. And sadly, I wasn't part of the food waste trial, as I know some of us were. But actually, the feedback from our residents is that over 95% of people involved in that trial, agree it's the right thing to do. And I sincerely hope that the government, will consult further in the spring and make food waste collections for all mandatory from, I think, 2023 as said, because I think for those people that have been part of the trial, they've seen a significant reduction in the amount that they are disposing of through their residual waste, and also saving money as well, which is really positive. Do I have any other Cabinet members wishing to speak on this item at all? No, then in that case, Lucy, we'll move to the vote then, please.
Councillor Kellam Cook.
For.
Councillor Barry Dobson.
For.
Councillor Annie Mason.
For.
Dr. Peter Mosley.
For.
Councillor Robert Reid.
For.
Councillor Adam Stokes.
For.
Councillor Rosemary Trollope-Bellew.
For.
That's carried, Leader.
Super, thank you, Lucy. Well, moving on to the next agenda item, which I know a lot of people, both internally and externally to the Council, are interested in, is obviously the items for Cabinet decision, which is non-key, which is the public realm improvements on St Peter's Hill in Grantham. Well, this agenda item outlines a proposal to install and unveil a statue of the late Baroness Margaret Thatcher, our first female Prime Minister born here in Grantham. The plinth is in place, as many of you will have seen, with the associated paving around that area. Now, as our communities bear the brunt of the economic fallout of the pandemic, with many of our businesses and tourist attractions struggling for their very survival, this event will undoubtedly draw a large number of visitors to the area. Importantly, the statue and the unveiling event will give a much needed boost to our local economy. Now, as we would all expect, an event of this scale does incur significant costs. That's why this report recommends that the cost of this event is financed through a comprehensive fundraising campaign. And this is a very crucial point. Our expectation is that the cost of the event will be fully met through voluntary donations, not the public purse. This is for us to provide cash flow and forward funding for that event, and then when we start to receive the donations, it will pay in full, and it is my expectation it will pay in full for this event. And for an event of this scale, the report recommends that we use an experienced events company to ensure that the event operates safely and effectively, not only maximising the opportunities to promote South Kesteven, but crucially keeping both visitors and residents safe. This is why, I'm sure you will agree, it is a priority for all of us here today. Now, before we go through the report, I would like to say that I do understand that there is a great debate about the legacy of Baroness Thatcher. Indeed, over the last few days, we have seen this play out across both local and national press and social media. However, what cannot be disputed is that this major event provides a fantastic opportunity for the Grantham community to celebrate its heritage and to promote the district of South Kesteven to both a national and international audience. In what is the most challenging periods of our lifetime through COVID, at the end of this, holding a major event of this scale and maximising the opportunities for our local economy is, I believe, the right thing to do for our community and our businesses. And not only that, but this unveiling event will have a significant public figure of national importance unveiling this statue. I am extremely confident of the full fundraising power that we'll be able to harness, covering the costs, but also potentially providing a legacy in terms of looking after the statue, and also a contribution to the museum, which holds exhibits within their facility. I've already been in touch with numerous donors and senior party figures, and we are ready to start this fundraising campaign. And I hope I have the support of all the cabinets with this report. I know it is exceptionally challenging at the present time. This is a future event, one of which I know will be fully funded by the private purse. I do have some cabinet members to speak first, and I'd like to go to Councillor Robert Reid, who I understand will be seconding this proposal. Councillor Reid.
Thank you very much, Leader. I think I'm the only cabinet member for planning who is the person that passed this application and had to listen to the negative rhetoric that Mr. and Mrs. Morgan firstly had to present. I admit that it hurt me to listen. Today, my head remembers as a boy away at boarding school. 7 weeks of no letters from home at 11 years old. No telephones were allowed. Yes, the postal strike. Margaret Thatcher pulled Britain back up after many years of union repression. The postal strikes, miners' strikes, and the previous winter of discontent. The same boy, terrified of more electric cuts. No. When Margaret was in charge, she saw to that. She was the first woman Prime Minister. She put the economy back in order. She got rid of the old guard grandees who had put the Conservatives in the Dark Ages. She put Britain back on the world map and gave the British people some respect. Back on the world stage. Led the country through conflicts with other countries. She was the Iron Lady that also put the iron back in Britain. As I turned into a man proud to be British, the world and the United Kingdom has moved on. The 5th richest nation still. Now the question of money. Our resident and fellow councillors' public purse, is it too much to ask that we ask to underwrite, yes, underwrite this unveiling event? Yes, I will say again, underwrite for a few months, preparing for bookings, organising, keeping our residents and guests safe. The event will give us a national platform for the town of Grantham, where I smile in respect at the Roberts grocery store each time I pass. The opportunity to pay back funds is needed. Is it too much to ask, as long as we fundraise and we state that we are facilitating? An honour for many of us in this Conservative administration. I therefore look forward and endorse the seconding of this motion, and of course look forward to listening to my cabinet colleagues in their support. Oh, and by the way, there won't be any paid catering costs for the public purse. I can see to that with much experience. I have catered for prime ministers and royalty in the past. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Reid, and for your very generous offer of support there as well. So I can move on to Councillor Dr. Peter Mosley, please.
Thank you very much, Leader, and who could refuse the offer of cake from Councillor Reid there? Yeah, I mean, I'm delighted to be able to support this. I mean, I'm very confident that the funds will be recouped, but I think there's a bigger thing to think about here. It's not very often a small town in Lincolnshire can, lay claim to the first female Prime Minister and some of the great successes that she had. I appreciate there are people that see her as a divisive figure, that look negatively on her. But I mean, I very much think that we should be celebrating this. And this goes to the conversation really about statues and what they are and what they represent. And to me, they represent the start of a conversation. We should be putting people on statues that we should be having conversations about, so that we can talk about what they did and what they didn't do, and we can celebrate their successes and commiserate their failures. But nevertheless, it should be so that, you know, young men and women can walk down the street with their children, and when their children say, "Mummy, Daddy, who's that?" You can start that conversation. And I'd be very pleased to have that statue in the town. I was just thinking a bit earlier about some of the things that I remember of my youth under the reign of the premiership of Margaret Thatcher. And one of the things that stuck in my mind was the Falklands conflict. In fact, and we're just approaching. We're just over a year away from the 40th anniversary of that conflict. And of course, Lincolnshire played a vital role at the very beginning of that with Operation Black Buck, where Vulcan bombers from RAF Waddington, just up the road, took off and flew via Ascension Island and were able to bomb the runway at Stanley, and therefore put off the Argentinians from holding their aircraft there. And it was our first female Prime Minister that turned around and said, "I will protect the sovereignty of our foreign lands," and she did. So I'm very, very pleased that we're discussing this, and I'll be very pleased that we underwrite this as a council, because I know it will be value for money, and I know we will get our money back. Thank you.
So thank you, Councillor Dr. Peter Mosley, and if I can go to Councillor Annie Mason, please.
Thank you, Leader. I agree it is going to be very challenging, but I think it's going to be fantastic exposure for Grantham in the district. What I would ask, however, is the external organisation that's engaged to manage the event actually makes contact with the local retailers and businesses, not necessarily just for fundraising purposes, but also to include them. I think it would be really good and positive for a collective event where retailers and businesses are involved and can encourage these visitors to their shops and businesses, perhaps holding competitions or window displays or whatever they decide. But I think it's important that we make it a collective event across the board. Thank you. Happy to support.
No, thank you, Councillor Mason. That makes a really good point, actually, because the unveiling day, whenever that is announced, we will have a significant number of visitors, and we've got to harness them in the town to see the real beauty of the town and what's on offer as well. So I'm sure if this decision is passed and we can procure the services of this company, we'll then be able to go out and also speak to the retailers and traders alike to make sure they're also involved in the day. So it really is a day for Grantham. And if I can go to Councillor Trollope-Bellew next, please.
Thank you very much, and obviously I am in support. If we could just take the politics out of this and look at this event as the first woman Prime Minister who came out of Lincolnshire, out of the small market town of Grantham, and think of how this will enhance, particularly for my cabinet role of visitor economy, I think then that is how we need to go forward. Thank you, Leader.
No, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ray Wootton, please. Are you there, Ray?
Yes, thank you very much indeed, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for allowing me to speak. Mr. Chairman, I fully support the installation of a statue to the late Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, and the fact that funding for this should be raised by private donations if possible. If you look at Huddersfield, where former Prime Minister Harold Wilson's statue stands, a town where he grew up, and despite politics, it is right that he should be there. The same should apply to Mrs. Thatcher. Mr. Chairman, I remember the time in 1977 when I joined Bedfordshire Police. Unemployment was at post-war high. Police numbers were 102,000. By the time Mrs. Thatcher left office, they were 120,000. And you might be interested to know from March this year, we have now got 129,000. At the time that Mrs. Thatcher came to power, we had the winter of discontent in 1978. There were power cuts, queues at petrol stations, inflation was at 26.9%, mass walkouts by unions demanding pay rises, with many on strike. The country was a mess. At the 1979 election, Mrs. Thatcher became the first female Prime Minister. She took control of this country, which is in a state of decline. By the time she left in 1990, after winning 3 elections, unemployment was lower. She believed in cutting taxes and empowering the individual and became an inspiration for other countries around the world. Mr. Chairman, I recall my period of office as Mayor of Grantham in 2009-10, being asked, why did we have a statue? Where was Mrs. Thatcher's museum? And why isn't there a street named after her? I lost count the number of times I was interviewed from journalists around the world asking those same questions. That same interest is still there today. Although a controversial figure to some, she is nevertheless viewed favourably in history alongside Sir Winston Churchill. She put the great back into Great Britain and restored pride in being British. The statue once erected will do the same for our great town of Grantham. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Wootton, for those words. Councillor Ian Selby, I'm sorry I missed you off there. You were supposed to come in before Councillor Wootton. Are you there, Ian?
I am. Thank you very much indeed, Callum. Yeah, thank you for allowing me to speak on this issue. This is obviously a very divisive issue, and statues are currently not very popular. It's not my intention to speak on this issue to offend anybody whatsoever. You know, as you guys know, I've got a lot of respect for you, Cabinet members. So I wish to speak from an independent and neutral viewpoint. I could actually give you a list as long as my arm of the reasons to reject a Margaret Thatcher statue, and I've heard a few that are not too, I don't think are good reasons for having it. But today it's about the process of the statue and not the rights and wrongs of Margaret Thatcher. I'm not saying to you today, don't erect the statue. Can I just repeat that? I'm not saying to you today, don't erect the statue. But what I am saying to you is that you have just one more thing to do before you consider it, and especially if you want to use £100,000 of local taxpayers' money to underwrite it. It must be well over 18 months ago now that I asked Callum's predecessor at the full council, Councillor Matthew Lee, for a local referendum on the erection of a Margaret Thatcher statue, and my suggestion was rejected flatly. Now, some of Margaret Thatcher's supporters, they've got very deep pockets, and I'm sure that £100,000 to some of them is pocket money. It really is. So it should be private money and not public money that is used. Otherwise, it just rubs in the noses of those that don't want it. And it adds insult to injury, and it'll antagonise them further. And it's asking for trouble as well, stirring up a hornet's nest. And just remember that the Tory Westminster Council rejected it for a reason. I actually wrote to Margaret Thatcher 3 times and very politely asked for an interview for the local radio station for her to talk to the local people about her career, and I never even received an acknowledgement. If Margaret Thatcher had been the Member of Parliament for Grantham, then that would have added a lot of weight to the argument for having it. But well, whether she didn't actually want a statue herself, so you know there is a question mark of how much she actually liked this town. But before you consider erecting the statue, never mind even spending local taxpayers' money on it, first you need to win the arguments for having it, and the only way that you can do this is through a local referendum, and that referendum must be fair and it must be conducted honestly. If the local people turn around and say that they want a statue, then nobody else, in my view, has the right to vandalise it. If it's the wishes of the local people to have it, then those wishes should be respected. And likewise, if the local people say no, they don't want it, then that also should be respected. if you do not get this statue endorsed by the local people in a referendum, and then you erect it, then you really, it's, as I said, it's asking for trouble, and it will always then be viewed by many as the illegitimate statue. And bear in mind that not all Labour supporters, and I'm not a Labour supporter at the moment, as you know, I'm an independent, are against it. The late former councillor John Hurst, leader of the Labour group, he was in favour of it. There are other Labour members that are in favour of it. But remember that the greater the endorsement that you have to this, the greater the legitimacy it has. And if the statue is not endorsed by the local people, then you should consider putting it somewhere indoors, somewhere where people can choose whether they want to view it or not. But to erect it, telling the people that you are having it, whether you like it or not, is asking for trouble. And I would suggest to you, as a cabinet, seriously consider that, because at the moment you're doing a good job. You know, I like what you've been doing as a cabinet, and I've got a lot of respect for all of you. And as many of you may know, that I'm not Margaret Thatcher's biggest fan. I am, though, however, a fan of Her Majesty the Queen. I'm a big fan of the Queen. And personally, I would rather have a statue of Her Majesty the Queen on St. Peter's Hill. But as much as I admire our Queen and love her dearly, I wouldn't consider erecting a statue of her without asking the people first. And that's what you should be doing, in my view. I'd like to thank you very much indeed for listening to my views. I hope I haven't offended any of you Cabinet members, and I respectfully and politely saying to you that it's the process at the moment that is not right. And finally, by asking the people what their wishes are, that's what I call honest politics, and I hope that's what you perceive. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Not at all. Thank you, Ian. And can I firstly thank you for your comments? And I've got a great deal of respect for you, as I know you have for me as well. I know we don't always agree on everything, and politics comes into it. But thank you for being very respectful on that, and you certainly didn't offend anybody.
Thank you.
Do I have any other speakers on this item? No. Then in that case, Lucy, then I would proceed that we move to the vote, please.
All right, Leader. Councillor Kellen Cook.
4.
Councillor Barry Dobson.
4.
Councillor Annie Mason.
4.
Councillor Dr. Peter Mosley.
4.
Councillor Robert Reid.
Underwrite. 4.
Councillor Adam Stokes.
4.
Councillor Rosemary Trollope-Bellew.
4.
That's unanimous, Leader.
Thank you very much, and thank you everybody for that debate and those comments. And of course, the hard work starts now. And I'm sure myself and a number of other councillors, and I know Councillor Graham Gill's on this call, will look forward to getting that fundraising campaign on board, and I'm sure we'll all look forward to inputting into that. So moving on to the next item on the agenda, which is items for information. Well, there are no matters referred to Cabinet by the Council or Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Therefore, moving on to agenda item number 9, which is the key and non-key decisions taken under the delegated powers, pages 85 to 123. Do I have any comments relating to these? There's just one minor error, which is on page 90, which is under the legal and governance implications, which is referring to the spend of the 82,000, and I'm advised that that should be 80,000, 80,000. Do I have any comments on those items from Cabinet? And do I have a seconder for those items? Councillor Trollope-Bellew, I know a number of those items are in your own portfolio. Okay, do I have any Cabinet members wishing to speak on agenda item number 9? No, therefore, Lucy, can we move to the vote, please?
Certainly, Leader. Councillor Kellen Cook.
4.
Councillor Barry Dobson.
4.
Councillor Annie Mason.
4.
Councillor Dr. Peter Mosley.
4.
Councillor Robert Reid.
4.
Councillor Adam Stokes.
4.
Councillor Rosemary Trollope-Bellew.
4.
That's carried, Leader.
Lovely, thank you very much. Therefore, moving on to representations and questions from non-Cabinet members. If there are any, would you please like to indicate in the chat box now? I'll just give it a couple of moments. No. Therefore, we will move on to agenda item number 11, which is the Cabinet Forward Plan from the 1st of January 2021 to the 31st of December 2021. This report is for noting. Does any Cabinet member have any questions or comments relating to this forward plan? Councillor Reid.
Just to say, Leader, that the programme for January the 12th is going to be a pretty lengthy and heavy one. Obviously, preparation between now and then is going to be very necessary to be as concise as we possibly can be.
Absolutely. Okay, well, as that's just for noting, we will move on to the final agenda item, which is a urgent item which has been brought before this committee. Therefore, I propose that under section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public may be excluded from the meeting during any listed items of business on the grounds that if they were present, exempt information could be disclosed to them as defined in the relevant paragraphs of Schedule 12A of the Act.
Happy to second that, Callum.
Lovely, thank you. Do we need a vote to go into closed session, Lucy?
Yes, Leader, we do.
Brilliant. If we can move to the vote then, please.
Councillor Callum Cook.
4.
Councillor Barry Dobson.
4.
Councillor Annie Mason.
4.
Councillor Dr Peter Mosley.
4.
Councillor Robert Reid.
4.
Councillor Adam Stokes.
4.
Councillor Rosemary Charlotte Bellew.
4.
That's carried, Leader.
Thank you, Lucy. If I can therefore thank all the members of the press and public that have joined us for today's meeting. Obviously, I wish you all a festive break as to whatever that looks like this year. And thank you for your support and listening in to us today at today's meeting. If you'd like to remove those individuals, please.
Thank you, Chairman.